Ready? All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Get the gavel. Woohoo. All right. It's been a week, let me tell you. Welcome to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It is Thursday, March 16th, 2023. We're in Trade and Transit 2. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Frank, would you call the roll?
Okay, Mr. Allison,
Here.
Mr. Mackey,
Here.
Mr. Pelisi.
Here.
Mr. Biter,
Here.
Ms. Mealy, Mrs. Katz. Here. Mr. Yoder.
Here, we have a quorum, a full quorum tonight. Item 4, limited courtesy to the floor. We've had no requests tonight. We're going to jump around a little bit. We're going to move to item 10 through 16 first. So item 10 is subdivision for WBT Realty 3600 West 4th Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Mr. Narr, good evening, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder and members of council. What I present to you tonight is a request from WR Realty Company at 3600 West 4th Street. They are located within the commercial zoning district. They are requesting to subdivide a little over 5 acres into a separate parcel. The residual will be about 6 acres that they'll maintain for the premises, which obviously is Fairfield Automotive. It is for a possible future development. It was reviewed by Lycoming County Planning. The comments that you had before you have been corrected. It did go through the city planning and recommend positive recommendation for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Narr. Are there any comments or questions from members of council on item 10? Ms. Mealy.
Just out of curiosity, and we may not know this, but is that
Mic up.
commercial or a?
Mic up.
It
Sorry.
is in a commercial zoning district and there will be a commercial business that will be located there.
Okay. all right, so it's
It'll actually
commercial.
come back before council as a land development
Yeah,
plan.
no, that's, yeah. Just somewhat curious. It looked like it'd be pretty steep for any sort of housing, so that was why I was. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz. Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 11, we have a demo application for 143 Washington Boulevard. This is a Lycoming College item. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second, Mr. Narr.
Again, what you have before you is request from Lycoming College to demo the property address 143 Washington Boulevard. It is currently vacant. It is within a residential zoning district and it is across the street from Lycoming College. At this point in time, there is no possible development at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Narr. Any comments or questions from members of council? Hearing seen none, Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 12, a demolition application for 809 Franklin Street. Again, Lycoming College. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second, Mr. Narr.
This follows the same guidelines. It's 809 Franklin Street. It is within the residential zoning district. There had been a fire there previously at the location. It is owned by Lycoming College. It's around the corner from Washington Boulevard, and I believe that's what street that is up there, Franklin Street. So it's right around the corner from the corner of Franklin and Washington Boulevard. And again, I can answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Mealy, then Mrs. Katz.
When the fire occurred there, was it owned by Lycoming then, or was it?
I don't believe they owned it at the time. I know Lycoming College had purchased it and actually the fire department was utilizing that for some training.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Bennett's here. He can.
Oh, hi.
How you doing?
That was actually my second question. Do we have a representative? But yeah, I see you out there. That's all.
Yeah, if you want to, I mean, did you own it when the fire happened?
No.
Okay, I didn't think they did, like you said, the fire happened in that area.
And then actually the fire company approached us to use that for training. So we actually use both properties that we're going to bring forward
Mhm.
for training purposes. And so that's probably why you saw fire trucks there. It really wasn't a fire. So.
No, that's fine. So they don't light it on fire to use it for
No,
training,
they-
because that was part of what I was
maybe
wondering.
They would, but they didn't. They just used it for training, go through the roof and then using it for access through doorways and other things.
Is that what happened to the roof of the other structure?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Correct.
I noticed that several months ago and was like, man,
Yes.
that's a strange hole in the roof. Okay, all right,
Yes.
got it. Thank you.
Mrs. Katz.
Don't go away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't go away. So you're demoing both these properties.
Correct.
There's nothing on the plans for what you're going to do with these properties at all?
Not at this point. The one on the corner of Franklin and Washington is very close to we have a parking lot there.
Okay, the
There's
little one
two
on the
additional
corner.
properties. Yes, we actually own all the way around that block, except for the two additional properties that are still remaining. Potentially in the future, we could use it for parking or for a building of some type in that location. The one down on Washington Boulevard, actually, we own quite a few properties next to that as well. Typically now it's green space. Again, looking at future use of it, we're not sure yet at this point. One of the things we've done in the past is along Basin Street, we've accumulated some properties and then look to redevelop that area in the future, but we need the property first to do that.
Okay, okay. I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mealy.
Minor point, but my kids and I really enjoy those service berry trees come June. So if you can avoid cutting those down for as
We
long
will.
as possible.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes,
Mrs. Katz,
Yes,
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 13, certificate of appropriateness on embellished salon studio, 140 West 4th Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
second,
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar.
What you have before you is at 140 West 4th Street. It's within the central business district, which requires a certificate of appropriateness. The sign that you have before you does meet zoning. They are requesting, and obviously the sign will be of a of a white background with black lettering as shown above. It would be required, obviously, to apply for a building permit, and they're requesting a certificate of appropriateness to place the sign there. So it is a new business that is coming in there in that location.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Are there any comments or questions from members of council?
that one was.
Ms. Mealy?
Is there anyone here?
I do have a representative here from Embellish.
Well, if any,
They may be via Zoom.
okay.
I'm here.
I just wanted to say, if there's anything you want to say about your business, as long as there's a little bit of a platform, you're more than welcome to.
No, I was hoping my wife could make it where we could make it in person, but unfortunately that wouldn't happen. But yeah, we're hoping to have a grand opening May 5th. So the hair area in the front is open now, and then we're working on the tanning, and we'll have some other services as well that are coming. So it's coming along pretty well.
Fantastic. The space looks excellent. It's definitely a nice addition to 4th Street. So thank you.
They're
Thank you.
actually the Lock Haven area and I'm putting a business here in the city.
Oh, awesome.
It's good to see. We appreciate the investment. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we
Any other-
like the area, and we have high hopes. So we enjoy it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes,
Mrs. Katz,
yes,
Mr. Yoder,
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 14, certificate of appropriateness for signage for rear at 101 West 3rd Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar.
What you have before you is a request to locate a full rear of the building at 101 West 4th Street. The top image will obviously say Liberty Towers. The rest will be an American flag. It will be required to be mounted. It'll be made out of PVC pipe and a hard type of material that'll basically cover that, which should keep it as far as from fading and things of that nature. At that point, like I said, the owner is requesting a certificate of appropriateness because it's within the central business district, and I do have representative here.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Any comments or questions from members of council? Ms. Mealy?
always me, Gary, sorry. Just a couple of quick questions. Go over for me what this means in terms of our signage requirements and other design standards in the area. I mean, this is the rear of the facade. But to what extent does this
Because the
have to-
top part is going to say Liberty Towers as part of a sign, so therefore any part of a sign in accordance with the ordinance requires to go through this process.
Right, and that's why I'm asking you, does it meet the ordinance?
Does it meet the ordinance? Again, the ordinance is kind of, some of it may be vague because it says they would prefer it to be made out of wood material, but it doesn't say that it's against the wood material.
Well,
That's the
we
only thing.
clearly allow plastic material
Yes,
elsewhere
correct.
in that area, so that's not really. a
Right,
concern
so
to me. You're telling me that the entirety of the sign is made of PVC?
Jerry, Mr. Miller actually is with
Okay.
Century 21 is actually
Oh,
going to
okay,
sign
got
it.
it, got it,
And then Jerry represents 101 West.
got it.
Apologize, I sprinted from baseball practice to get to here.
No apologies needed. Thank you for being here.
I don't
Yeah,
know if
thank you.
you've seen,
No, we haven't seen the other renderings. That's cool.
this is not actually it's conceptual.
Yeah.
So they're looking at covering the rear facade.
Mhm.
The M&T letters would be removed. A facade wall would be built. These would be individually lit channel orders
Mhm.
from the rear, so the fronts would light. And then they were planning in place to be on top of the elevator tower.
Mhm. Got it. And so the whole of the sign is made out of PVC or sitting on top of,
Yes,
okay, yeah,
in most cases, it's basically like built,
okay,
all UV protected. The tower,
So-
I'm not 100% sure what that's being built out of. The letters themselves. Here's a build out of just the letters to show you. what's
Awesome.
Specifically built.
Thank you very much.
got it. So they would protrude from the sign,
Correct.
okay.
About 4 inches. So everything is aluminum construction. The bases will be a Lexan
Mhm.
polycarbonate, LED illumination, and everything is painted with a basically clear coat.
Got it.
paint. So
So the upper part of the sign will be like any other sign we have in town, correct?
this portion here.
Got
So
it.
Basically, it looks just like.
Right, right. Okay. And so then but the bottom part of the sign you're saying is effectively a billboard?
At this point, it's not. I mean, it could be externally illuminated down the road if they so choose, but at this point, it's not.
Got it. I guess. Well, I'm concerned about two things. I'm pretty sure the signage standard mentions that signage has to be in keeping size wise with other signs in the area.
This is realistically what we're doing. This is based off the architectural drawings that we do have. This part of that, we have the sign itself.
Right.
That is in compliance with the sign.
Right. No, I'm not arguing with Liberty Tyler signage at all.
Place down. It's obviously made out of that type of materials.
Got it. But so that he's not terming as a sign, that's kind of a different certificate of appropriateness for a facade remodel, more or less. Got it. Okay. And then I guess my only concern is, and this may just be a terminology thing. When you describe it as a billboard, billboards usually get changed out every 3 or 4 months because the
Correct.
signage wears.
It's basically built and designed the same way that what it's going to stretch.
Okay.
It's going to cover up imperfections within the rear facade. But it's built for long term. It's not built to change it.
Okay. So,
Canvas type of material that we stretched out. Really won't know it's like a banner, but that's the type of material it's made out of.
okay.
So it's built like a billboard, but it'll be static like a picture essentially.
It's made to last for
Yeah.
several
It's going to
years.
stretch like a drum top.
What is
Okay.
the life expectancy of it?
It's almost all the UV inks are 7-year minimum anymore, and then we put a UV protectant on top, so. I mean, it'll fade like paint.
Is there any windows behind that
There's
at
no
all?
windows.
There's
No,
no
no
windows,
windows.
it's just the back of the building at all, so there's nothing that's gonna be obstructing anything inside.
So
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Back to the building, which will all be covered.
And
How long is this gonna take to do this?
So right now, we're waiting on obviously the architectural drawings to make sure that it's going to be building code as far as fastening to that. Once we have that, it's just a matter of how quickly they can install it.
Okay. And then I guess my last question is, it will not damage the, I mean, this is as much a question, I suppose, for the, for the owner of the building as anything else. It's not going to damage the structure, right? Like being basically sealed off in plastic is not like damage to brick or anything.
The only mounting portion will be on the exterior portion. There will be no passage within the center.
Got it. Yeah, I guess the rear of the building, while it's not particularly beautiful, is in good shape. And I didn't want to see us at some point pull this off and have it be deteriorated under there or something.
Like I said, that's one of the, as part of the fire building zoning permit, they're required to see two sets of engineer drawings, make sure that it's not, it's really fastened.
Got it.
It is good against wind then, that you don't have to worry about it.
Yes, so the whole thing will basically be perforated, but still be made out of a vinyl plastic per se,
But he's saying the window.
not
is
that
sure.
simple.
Say something does go wrong, how fast would you get there to fix it?
We're 3 blocks away.
Okay.
So then my last question, it's a really interesting idea, guys, and I think it's kind of cool. But my last question is actually for the other members of council, which is I'm just concerned. It would seem to meet our signage ordinance, but this is sort of a different step for the city into our downtown design ordinance, I suppose. This doesn't really fall under the downtown design ordinance because building wraps are not really like
I'm looking at
foreseen
this,
in that ordinance.
I'm looking at this like it could be classified as a mural.
Yeah, is that, so we're thinking of it as like public art of sorts?
Anytime that we brought in our way of painting.
Okay. Downtown design, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So that's what we're considering it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to.
So
figure out
it
what
follows
we-
precedent that we've done before.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if there's any sort of precedent that we're setting that we don't want to set. I mean, we
don't
have
think so.
murals that block up
Yeah.
the parking deck.
Correct.
Right, and we've got the ones down by the
Yep.
Bullfrog. Yeah, so it seems to me like it's like we're not doing anything.
I don't
that we
think
wouldn't wanna do. Yeah,
The only thing it is, it's not paint, it's piping, so.
well, but I don't think,
It's the
I
same
think the
thing, it's
ones,
like
the
a-
ones on the parking deck are some sort of synthetic material too, I think. They're not paint.
That's right. It
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is it the same material as the ones on the parking deck? Anybody know?
More advanced.
Because of the difference in time, yeah, but would it have been, I don't remember what those materials were. It seems to me it was,
I don't know what those.
okay, all right, got it. Well, if this is something we're gonna see more of, we should maybe try to work it in there. My only concern is winding up with something we don't necessarily want stretched across the building downtown and not having any means of differentiating the two things. So we should maybe look at revising the ordinance if this is something that's gonna become a common.
Actually, conversation, I sent an associate to basically do preparation for enforcement changes as far as the zoning ordinance.
Mhm.
So that will actually be put out. That's one of the issues that we're looking for the signs and stuff.
Yeah, well, that design ordinance needs to be strengthened or just modified, updated to the current standards, yeah. Okay, all right, awesome. Thank you, Gary. Thanks, guys.
Any other comments or questions? No? All right. Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Franklin, the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes,
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 15, certificate of appropriateness signage for arrow and thread. Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion in a second. Mr. Nar, I think this is your last one.
One more time.
Home stretch.
Yep, correct. Again, this is a certificate of appropriateness for signage for arrow and thread. It is located on Williams Street. The signage that you do have before you, obviously, the background will be black with white letterings. The previous sign that was there was, I believe, was the Hartman Agency that was there. So they're replacing that at that point in time. And it does meet both, because it is made out of a wood structure and it does meet the design standards within the central business district as well as signage size.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Are there any comments or questions from members of council? Mrs. Katz.
Just has Christmas decorations behind this. Has this been up this long?
This is the actual sign, but what they did is the company that's making the sign further just pulled those images off from during that time frame.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say, I kind of missed that one.
They photoshopped it, I should say.
Okay, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Franklin, the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yeah.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0.
I
Yeah.
actually have one small question, which is once again, what is this business? And does anybody want to tell us about it?
What the business is, it is, she's going to be offering, and she's actually with us via Zoom.
I'm just,
She's going to be offering classes for sewing and things of that nature for children and stuff to get into sewing.
that's awesome. If she's there and would like to tell us about it.
Alicia?
If not,
Hi, thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm not there in person. Yes, I've been in business for about 8 years now. And I'm super excited to have a space downtown, and be able to offer this on a larger scale. So, I'll be teaching mainly children's classes, some adult classes, ladies' nights, things like that. But yeah, I'm looking to bring back a lost art.
that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'll be checking it out.
Yeah. Me too.
Can't
You
wait.
gotta keep my 18-month-old occupied.
Yeah, well, and do you take people who can't sew at all and are well past the age when they should have learned?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Very
Thank
excited. Thanks for your investment in the city.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We're gonna jump around a couple more times here, and then we'll get back to the regular thing. I think I missed item 3. So, item 3, approval of city council
Adam,
meeting minutes.
excuse
Yeah.
me, we need to vote on this.
Oh, I thought we
This,
did.
this
No,
last item.
We did.
We did vote.
We did vote?
Yeah, we did vote.
We did.
did.
And then I told
And
my
then,
question.
and then she did it
that's-
afterwards. Yeah, we voted. I'm not
Okay.
I'm not.
He was
losing it
trying to cut
completely
me off,
today.
but you know.
All right. Item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from March 2nd, 2023. Is there a motion and a second? So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing seen none. Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Viter,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Let's jump to item 16. We have an update on the levy and flood maps from Shannon Rossman. I know you're here. We won't keep you for the whole time. Why don't you take 5 minutes or so and give us an update on where we're at?
Sure. I'm Shannon Rossman. I'm the Lycoming County Planning Director. I have been working with John Sanders and South Williamsport on levy items. So just to give you a little idea of what's going on currently, as you're aware, we have about I think it's around 60 relief wells that are in need of either replacement or rehabilitation. We've had some difficulties due to the pandemic and due to finding qualified contractors to bid on the project. Our initial, this is out for bid, I think, for the 4th time now. It is currently out to bid. We will be accepting bids on April 28th, and we'll be opening them up May 4th at the commissioners meeting. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting last week. We had 2, what I believe are qualified contractors that do new well drilling. One of them flew in from Michigan. We had 2 contractors that I believe are qualified for well rehabilitation. So we do have more interested parties than we've had in the past. We've been able to clarify a number of issues. We were finally, in the last bid, we were able to clarify some issues that were catching some of the bidders previously with what is allowed to be, how the drilling methods, which drilling methods were able to be used. Because of the fact that it is a levee versus some of the other types of drilling that's done under high pressure water, certain types of drilling methods are not allowed. So that when that was finally clarified, that cleared up a number of items. We've also, in this bid, we have extended the time frame to the max allowed by our grant, the first grant that we have with RACP with the state. The county has a $1.1 million grant with for the first grant. We also went back for $750,000 for a second RACP grant. So we are allowing extended timeframes because of supply chain issues that will help reduce the bid received. We've also offered that if they can show us that they would be able to give us a reduced cost by extending the grant, we are willing to ask RACP for a time extension. Right now, we would hope to have all of the relief wells completely either rehabilitated or drilled that are identified by the end of 2024. As I said, though, if they can offer a significant cost reduction by having a time extension, we would consider that. I'm actually giving a tour to one of the companies next week of the current relief wells. So because of the placement of the relief wells, we have informed them that there will have to be a lot of coordination. One, we have to have laydown areas, and we'll work with John and South Williamsport on those also. Two, we know that this will be over the course of a year and a half, almost. There will be Little League events going on. There will be baseball events going on. There will be other events going on. And some of the relief wells are in damper areas, so they will have to be done either in a dry season or in winter time. In order for the drilling equipment is a very large piece of equipment. It's not your standard drilling equipment, so it will have to be very stable for when it's used. The one area we'll also be putting out to bid in the near future is when Interstate 180 was built, it cut off the access to the Faxon area relief wells down off of the Faxon exit. So we have to reinstall 2 ramps. There'll be stone ramps, but we'll have to bid those out. Because of the way the creek flows in the middle of that area, we cannot get the drilling equipment in there without putting 2 ramps in, one from each side. One will come in from the Riverwalk side, the other one will come in from the industrial area. So we will have to bid them out. They will stay for any future maintenance. The second item that we're currently working on, you all know that we have the EDA grant for $5.6 million and the county is matching the 1.4 million. We had to halt the Memorial Avenue design work because of the Army Corps engineers. They need to do their analysis to determine what the proper fix would be. And then our consultant can go back and design that part of the project. The other part of that project is fixing cross pipes on the northeast levee. Right now, I'm working with our CEDACOG because they're the ones that are managing the administrative side of the EDA grant. It's very technical. I have no clue. I'm not not up on those types of regulations. So they're helping with the bidding process and the requirements that EDA has for the grant. We are currently going through and making sure we have public easement or access easement to all of those cross pipes right now. We've been confirming with John and I believe it's Keith,
Yes.
Kevin, at the city to determine exactly who owns what or has easements to what. Because PennDOT has gone in and done work since then and moved things around. The Army Corps we don't have some of the updated stuff. Our cartographer has been doing a very diligent job in putting that together. And we think we have that all solidified now. So we'll submit that to CEDACOG for them to satisfy that condition with EDA. And from there, we'll be hiring a construction oversight person. And also our design engineer has been preparing the design for the cross pipes fix. So that will be going out to bid also for both of those sides of that project. We hope to have that out to bid by early summer. The other part of that, once the Army Corps is done with the city's
semi-quantitative risk assessment, SQRA.
what he said. Once the Army Corps is done with that part of the project, then we can go back, look at that, and our design engineer can take that for the Memorial Avenue section. I believe you're having both Memorial and Dewey done, correct?
It will be the entire stretch from essentially Memorial Ave Bridge over Lake Creek all the way up into all that Cumming Township.
Okay,
Cumming Township.
because the next part that we would need to go after grant funds or have grant funds for, or some funding for, would be the Dewey Avenue section. We know there's deficiencies at Memorial Avenue. We know Dewey Avenue also has deficiencies. The unique thing with Dewey Avenue is that you have High Street going over top. So we'll have to be dealing with PennDOT because of issues with height restrictions in there. And that will be some really technical design work between whoever gets that design consulting work and PennDOT and the Army Corps and the city. It's that will be quite the project. The other item that we're currently working on right now is we know that every time we've been going for grant funding, Senator Yaw and some of the other the federal elected officials have said, what are you going to do for future? How are you going to pay for the continued maintenance of these facilities? And so right now we're waiting for a scope of work and cost estimate. We had an initial meeting. Randy was able to attend and the mayor was able to attend and John was there. So what happened was we've asked our consultant to give us, we did the first operation and maintenance part of that where we gathered South Williamsport and Williamsport's information on what their current staffing was, where do we need to add staffing, what would that cost, and all that information. Now what we need to do is do an analysis based upon the projects continuing forward. What projects need to be done and funded on a regular basis. Not only fixing what we've identified, but fixing things as it keeps going. That continued O&M that is part of owning a levy. So we're waiting for our consultant to give us a cost estimate for that analysis. We have identified that we're asking them to analyze whether it should be a new authority or an existing authority, and analyze whether it should be the areas that have an impact from the levy, not just the areas that are behind the levy, but the areas that have an impact from the levy, or whether it should be something countywide that includes additional hazard mitigation and other incidences that are relative to that type of fee. Once we get that scope of work, we'll be sharing it with the city in South Williamsport and Loyalsock Township also for their levy too. So as we move forward with that, that will happen like with a two-step process. Once we sign a contract with them, what we would do is the first decision point is an existing authority or a new authority. And then from there on, you determine, okay, do you want to go with a impacted areas or do you want to go with a countywide? And they'll be showing us the pros and cons, and then you make a decision and then you finish the study. So we want to make sure that we cover the aspects needed to make the proper decisions for everybody, so that, the city has all the information, South Williamsport, Loyalsock, everybody has all the information and make an informed decision. And part of that is a lot of outreach and education, because we know that there will be a lot of people asking questions. And that's what I have so far. Any questions?
Thank you, Shannon. Any questions, Ms. Mealy?
Of course, but Vince might have had a hand up first.
Mr. Pelosi?
Well, probably lots of questions, but starting from the end first, just because that's the one I remember. When you were talking about countywide versus impacted areas in the levy assessment, if there were reasons to go countywide, would that be like flood mitigation countywide?
Yes, well, our initial thought is that, okay, a good example would be what happened in Lairdsville with the tornado. Not just flood mitigation, but disaster mitigation. So you had an incident where you had a tornado go through. Luckily, it was a small area, but its impact was no less than, on those people there. It did not rise to the level of state or federal impact funding. So therefore, there was no aid available. And there was quite a few people that were impacted there. So that is something that the county's initial thought is this would be an opportunity to provide some help in those situations. The other issue is we have some major watersheds that all deal with very localized flood events or storm events. Pine Creek, we had an ice dam issue recently. It only affected a small area, but there was still an effect. But obviously there is no way to assess any kind of aid for that because it's such a small area. We have the Lycoming, we have the Loyalsock, we have the Pine Creek, we have the Muncie. They all have some major flood issues. And And because of that, we would like to try to, if possible, come up with some funding to mitigate an effort if we have a project that will help mitigate flooding, or help if there is an event that's very localized and does not rise to the level of the state or federal aid.
But if an event did rise to the level of state or federal aid, we wouldn't be expected to.
It would all depend upon what the project was, because sometimes you need match money for things. And that's something that we don't always have readily available.
Right. Understood.
So
Um,
one of the other things to mention too is, we had the Warrensville slide. So Warrensville Road, which is a state road, was closed for quite a long time, which caused a lot of issues and access. Now, luckily, that was a state road and we were able to get that fixed. It took a while because of the cost. It ended up being a lot more expensive than originally thought. And we had to program that over a number of years on our transportation improvement program at the county level. However, if that same slide were to happen on a township road, I'm not sure there's too many townships that can come up with like $2 to $4 million to fix that in a reasonable amount of time. And I'm not sure what funding source they would go to for that. So those are the kinds of things that, we've thought about.
Got it.
So.
Thank you. Shannon, thank you very much for being here. I think that's me.
Too close to your computer.
Probably. I've been told that usually when there's a problem, it's my fault. So, no, but thank you very much for being here. I know a lot of us had questions about kind of the current status as far as where we're at with the levee and the flood map. So, in keeping kind of with working backwards, when we talk about areas of impact from the levee within our county, when we think of what kind of impact that's going to be, we just went over environmental impact, things of that nature. When we look at the success or fail of the levee, are we also considering financial impact of the areas of the county as to making sure the levee's taken care of? And the reason I bring that up is because, and maybe I'm missing the mark here with my question. When we look at the levee and how much business that protects, specifically within the city of Williamsport, and anybody's free to jump in and correct me if I'm not wrong, but I believe the last number I heard was that Williamsport is responsible for approximately 87% of household revenues generated within the county. And a large majority of that is businesses that are protected from the levee. So when we think about, making sure that the levee and these other flood mitigation, whatever you want to call them, structures. So when we think about the areas of impact, are we also considering financial, how that if the levee failed or if we did not have the levee fixed, how that would financially impact not just Williamsport or Loyalsock, but the county as with its entirety?
That's why we had thought about a countywide possibility. The thought was also that if there was some additional opportunities for other municipalities to see the ability to do programs or correct problems or be benefited by due to the localized issues that we do have, that a countywide may be a better sell. But it has been discussed. I'm not the one that's going to make that decision, obviously. So, but we did want to include that so that there was the opportunity to talk about that. We do want to make sure there are two fees that are assessed that we're definitely aware of and we've looked at. There's Wyoming Valley and there's Sunbury. We are looking at, when we're looking at the impacted areas, we're looking at the Sunbury model, which is beyond just the areas protected from flooding. We're looking at the areas that benefit from the being directly near the levee, not necessarily directly impacted by the flooding event. We wanted to make sure that that was what was analyzed. Wyoming Valley is only those that are protected for the flooding. So we definitely did look at that. But the countywide is a little more than just a levy. The levy is also including, we're also looking at some hazard mitigation, hazard reduction, things like that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I appreciate it. If I may, I had a couple more questions. Going back to Memorial Ave, do we have it's the eye wall structure, correct? That we're looking
Yes.
to have redone? You said we were waiting for the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yes,
to
the SQRA study has to be done before we can move forward with any more design work. Our consultant was able to do a lot of background study on that. And they provided all of that information to the Army Corps so they can start their SQRA from, not from scratch, but with updated background information. But now we can't move forward with the Memorial Avenue. There is no project yet for Dewey Avenue, but we can't move forward with the Memorial Avenue eye wall issue until the Army Corps is done with the SQRA. Because we need to know what they're going to say before we know what our options are for design.
Yes, ma'am. I was just wondering what kind of timetable, or if we had any idea of when
We're
the Army Corps is
at-
going to conduct
We're
that.
looking at 1 to 1.5 years, probably on the lesser side, because WSP has already done an extensive amount of the hydrologic and hydraulic modeling already very well, and they're very well in touch with the Army Corps. They have open-ended contracts with the Army Corps, so it should be on the shorter side, like a year and a half, something like that.
Okay.
But they are taking a very deep dive. In fact, in May, they're coming to town to grab all of our plan sets, and they're actually camping out here for 2 weeks to do a really deep dive, as everything exists right now on an entire levee system in its entirety. So
Okay.
myself, I've been pushing on the engineering end, and Mayor Slaughter has been pushing very respectfully to the Colonel at the Army Corps. So
Okay.
Unfortunately, we've been impacted by the retirements and lack of personnel replacements that the federal government and every other government entity is probably, and unfortunately, what we had hoped to start last year is just starting in May.
correct. And in addition to the risk assessment itself, the cost that we gave the Army Corps essentially $1 million or $500,000. There's also a public outreach component to let everyone know what they are doing. That's actually included in the package, so to speak.
Okay. I appreciate that. I felt the need to ask in my past that I've had to deal with government. It was always hurry up and wait. So I just didn't know if we had an idea on how long we'd have to wait. And then
As soon as we have something from the Army Corps, we'll move forward. Unfortunately, we can't do anything else with the Memorial Avenue. That's why we're going to continue to move forward with the cross pipes section of that grant. So at least we'll be able to get some of those items fixed and crossed off the checklist. And hopefully with the relief wells, hopefully we get responsible bidders, and we're able to start checking that list off also. And we are always looking for additional funding to help with any of the other projects that will help check off those items.
Okay, excellent. And then
Bonnie had asked me to check on the flood maps, and I did not have a chance to see when the flood maps will next be updated, but I will.
I can touch on that.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so currently our levee system is conditionally accredited through the SWIFT program, which is a really nice way of saying you're not taking care of things very well. But anyway, once we get full accreditation and full certification, then the flood maps have the ability to be redone, but not until then.
So that's a
Okay.
few years out then.
That's correct.
So do we have, and this is where I was going with, and I appreciate you jumping ahead already and addressing the flood maps. Well, while you're here, and maybe you can't speak to this, but I know when we look at potentially when the flood maps are going to be redrawn, I know there's a lot of concern as far as the flooding that occurs around Graffius Run, and how when the flood maps are redrawn, if Graffius Run flooding is not fixed at that point in time, how that's going to impact the neighborhoods around Graffius and those flood maps being redrawn to where you're gonna have large portions of residential neighborhoods that are now within a floodplain. So I didn't know if there was anything that we could.
I can touch on that.
Sure.
I'm bringing 2 heavy hitter Graphius proposals to you next week. One for the trash rack system
Mhm.
and one for the automated sensors that sit in the stream.
The
that will-
sonars.
that will actually send notifications to streets and parks to go out there when the water raises.
Okay,
And in addition to that, WSP is about 3/4 of the way done with sizing the basins. In reality, it's a lot of take, guys. It's a lot of property take. The basins, if in the event we want to build basins upstream of the 2 Graphius Run reaches, the amount of property take is large. So, and you're talking tens of millions of dollars for construction. So.
I'm really hoping that I mean, again, to my understanding is that the study that was done previously for the size of the piping for Graphius when it's gone underground.
Yeah.
It's able to handle the volume of water that we get. It's just a matter of keeping the racks clean and free of
Yes.
debris so as to inhibit the flooding.
Yeah,
So I think
Scott,
as long as we can keep the racks clean, hopefully we won't need to look at tens of millions of dollars
yes,
to put in flood basins upstream.
yes.
Okay. Those were all the questions I had. Thank you so much. And
No
again, I
problem.
appreciate you being
And,
here.
and when the flood mapping is redone, usually FEMA works with the municipality on their existing conditions. So if your system is working and you're able to prove that, you know, that would be up to them then how they would show that on a flood map. But all of anything that you have regarding your information would be shared, should be shared with them at that time.
He said a Graphius run. Would it be possible? Would it be considered a matter? It seems like perhaps we'd be wise to have, sorry. Too relaxed here. It seems like we might be wise to have like an executive session related to Graphius run at some point in the future, just talking about our plans for it, especially if we're looking at basins upstream and maybe other solutions other than the trash rack, before we start talking about anything with it publicly. It seems like it could become a matter of negotiation at some point, and that might be wise. So I know, yeah.
Step away from
Shannon
that.
says, "Oh, goodbye."
I apologize.
My problem.
I didn't mean to speak-
Levy, yes, Graphius run.
I didn't mean to speak out of turn in regards to that. I'm sorry if I did.
No. What were you saying? Sorry.
No, I
That was mostly addressed to you. And would you plan something with the administration so we can all sit down and talk
Oh.
about it? Maybe after the next council meeting or something like that, we could try and, would that be okay? It just seems like if you have a bunch of information about Graphius Run and how we're
Yeah.
proposing to handle it, it might be wise to discuss it sooner rather
Sure.
than later before we.
Certain
before we
council
start.
folks are already aware of actually this.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, we've all sort of talked about it, but I guess I'm just interested in maybe all of us talking about it together. Because
This is why I wanted Shannon.
before we,
tonight.
yeah, before we got ourselves into trouble. Shannon, for you and the levy, thank you very much for the update. We appreciate it. I think I'm sure that the county is as frustrated as we get sometimes at
Yeah.
the amount of money that we spend and the amount of time that we spent discussing this and how little ground we really seem to have gained on the problem. In
Yeah.
part because it feels as though with climate change, especially the rules just keep changing, you know? So as soon as you think you've wrapped your head around the problem, all of a sudden what you have to, the standards you have to meet are different. So
Yes.
we appreciate you helping us keep up with it. And John, we appreciate you helping us keep up with it too.
No problem. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. I'm
Thank you.
more than happy to talk to you. And I hope we have some good news in the near future.
Thank you so
Especially about
much.
the-
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, we will move up to, I think we've got what, 5 through 9 left. So we'll move up to item 5, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as part of the various components of the codified ordinances of Williamsport, Pennsylvania in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Lubin, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of council. In light of our very lengthy discussion last time, I have nothing new to add.
Any other comments or questions from other members of council? All right, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion and final reading.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
God, that was short-lived, Norm. Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 6, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing the execution of Bowman Field rental agreement.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Mr. Allison is gonna
Yes, sir.
cover this one for Mayor Slaughter. I'll turn it over to Mr. Allison.
Thank you. I attended the Bowman Field Commission meeting where we voted on this unanimously to pass this agreement for the rental agreement. and I think everybody's aware there are usage requirements that go hand in hand with this that really pretty tightly regulate the usage of the field, how it can be used, when it can be used. There's a lot of detail in there. I think everybody's gotten those documents because it's a top of the line, multi-million-dollar Major League Baseball quality field, and that asset needs to be protected, as well as all the technology that goes with it, the speaker system, the scoreboard. There's a lot of detail that goes into running that now that it wasn't quite that complicated before. In any case, because of those things, it was when this rental agreement was brought up, it was time to revisit the pricing structure because it hadn't been changed for years. We were way below what it should have been. And in the past, it was appropriate because the outside users were Penn College and high schools, various high schools in the area. There's a little bit of a disturbance amongst those groups, not so much Penn College, but the high school that use it for different things, because now you have the fee schedule before you, which is
It starts on page 5.
page 5, yeah. Yeah, I have it in here somewhere. Okay. In any case, base rental is $800. Enhanced rental, which includes. Now, I'm not going to go through everything, but enhanced rental includes everything in the base rental, plus the use of wireless microphone system for on-field ceremonies, player at-bat graphics, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of detail in here, but there's a continuous doubleheader has a base rental of $1,050. So those are significant increases in the rental, but there's a lot more goes into the upkeep of the field and the maintenance of it and the technology and everything. So this will help to offset that cost. Every game that's played there now, high school games, it's going to have to be run by cross-cutter personnel who know how to run the sound system, the scoreboard, and all the technology that goes with it. So it's a more complicated operation now. We talked to Cam, who's the Major League Baseball representative, who's paid by Major League Baseball to oversee the maintenance of the field and coordinate with the colleges, and they have that all down to the tarps and who takes care of them and puts them down, takes them up. So in any case, that's where we're at. And these fees that have been increased are actually still, they're about middle of the road, maybe a little bit above that, but they're not exorbitant to what other similar type fields are charging. So we're just getting up to speed on this. We've been through these kinds of things in a number of different areas in the city over the past few years. I think we're all familiar how things have not changed, fees haven't, and we've had to upgrade all those things. So this is part of that. It's a little more complicated and widespread, but that's basically the Reader's Digest version, condensed version. But are there any questions about that?
Mrs. Katz?
Just to clarify, just because MLB has come into Bowling Field and they take care of the field, the fees really were not covering our expenses before MLB was here. We are now conscientious what's going on in Bowling Field as far as the whole park is concerned. So having the fees now puts everything in better perspective. But I don't want anybody to blame MLB for this. We do have to increase these costs because it was never covered all the costs that were going into for people that were opening up the stadium, who were taking care of all the locker rooms, the bathrooms, so on and so forth. So now we're at least getting near it. And I think every year we're going to have to increase it just a little bit for everybody to understand that this cannot be coming out of taxpayers' money to maintain one of the jewels of our city. So, but just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Mrs. Katz. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Pelisi.
Just to speak on Bonnie's point, when people do look to rent the ball field out now for sporting events, that they keep in mind that they're playing in one of the oldest ballparks in the country. And they're also playing on one of only 3 Major League Baseball fields in the entire state, to where you have Phillies, Pirates, and now Bowman Field. So just something for them to also consider. So we have to make sure that the fees and rents are commensurate with exactly what you're getting.
Thank you, Mr. Pelisi. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 7, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution awarding professional design services to Livick Civil LLC.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Sander, I'll welcome you to the podium.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So what you have before you is a resolution to hire Livick Civil, if this will hold still, to design some crosswalks within the city of Williamsport. So the contract for Livick Civil, if approved, would be for $45,322. We would only have to pay 15% of it, which is $67,998. This is part of a Arley grant that the city received back in 2016. We were tapped on by PennDOT to try to use it. The original location is actually right over here, Pine and Third. At the time, I think Bill Nichols wanted to widen that road and make it two-way for buses. That's currently no longer a plan of ours. So PennDOT allowed the city and Livick to repurpose and relocate this grant money elsewhere. And actually Livick worked hand in hand with PennDOT to do exactly that. They are PennDOT's one of their preferred traffic engineering firms that work for District 3. In addition to doing that, while they were doing that, they also made a citywide traffic signal conditions document of all the signals in the entire city for my use, Scott Livermore's use, any of our other traffic guys' uses, foreman's uses as well. So to pay for this, we would have to use $66,798. And I'm recommending to pull that out of our Act 13 account, which has approximately $1 million in it. Any questions? This was discussed Tuesday in Public Works.
So it's Public Works,
This is
Mrs.
Public
Katz.
Works. Yes, this is something that's being done in how many different, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different areas and crosswalks. It's much needed.
Yep.
And I learned a lot about thermoplastic crosswalks. Never heard of it, but I guess it's really good. And getting the funding out of the Act 13 money, I think is well worth it, for the cost of this. And it's really, when you look at the total dollar amount, it really isn't that much to do the 6 crosswalks.
No, man,
That has to be done for.
Yeah, the entire
Because it
grant.
is going to be, what I didn't ask at Public Works though, this is all going to also handicap accessible, right, with all.
That's correct. Yes.
Well, I
Yes.
forgot to ask that question.
Yes.
Okay.
So what Livick will be doing is designing little mini plan sets for these locations to ultimately pulling together bid packages, bidding it out to the contractor, Also, administering the project during construction and bidding it and inspecting it. It's the whole package for grand total of $45,322.
And that's all. That was all the discussion.
Thank you, Mrs. Katz. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Mealy?
But not the actual crosswalks, right? For that 45,000? You said that the funding for that is coming from elsewhere, the construction of the
No,
crosswalks.
so we have a total grant allocation, hourly grant for $230,000. In that grant paperwork, the design fees are $45,322.
Got it.
So, yeah.
And then the 150 should cover the actual construction of those.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
It'll probably take
I
longer.
would certainly hope so.
It'll probably take longer to design it than it will to do it, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that all four, basically addressing all four corners / crosswalks of those intersections?
Actually, PennDOT and Livick actually pulled this together for me, so I don't have the answer to that off the top of my head.
If you wanted, I mean, that's not a major thing, but I guess we would, well, I guess part of the reason I'm asking is that I'm curious what we're doing at the intersection of Basin Street and Via Bella, because that's eventually going to be the lead into the access to the Riverwalk
Yeah,
there.
Yeah.
And so that's going to take a little bit of thought. I know some of the renderings I've seen have called for kind of creating like almost a lane of traffic under there for bike access.
that's correct. Yep,
And so then the crosswalk needs to be wider.
that's correct.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, but I guess part of what I'm wondering is, I'm assuming we're not crossing Basin Street there at the highway. I'm wondering if we're doing crosswalks all four ways across every intersection, because I don't think we currently have any kind
I
of.
can't answer that right now. When it comes up in design, I will, definitely let you know
Okay, yeah, I guess
if you wanted to.
I'd like to know, but I guess part of what I'm asking is, has the administration thought about what we want to do there? Or is that something, is it them making a recommendation to us, or is it us telling them what we want?
Specifically, it's them on this one in regards to the potential Riverwalk access there. That's us making that call, so to speak.
Okay, yeah, so theoretically, it's a back and forth, I guess.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
got it.
You're going to oversee that with what Liz is saying, that making sure that is going to be wide enough.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, we have a plan set for that from a couple of years ago. Well, we talked about this before, but I have about $50,000 in grant money for that intersection. We recently just put in for more grant money for that.
For the intersection or for the access?
For the Riverwalk connector piece.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually was a federal earmark request.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get it.
Yeah.
Because it'd be good to see us get over there one of these days. But I think clearly, as we're planning that intersection, we need to be assuming that at some point we will get there. Right,
Yeah.
with the bikes. And my next question is just, I don't know anything about thermoplastic crosswalk.
Sure. I'll explain.
How long do they hold up? is
Yes,
most of my
they're the
question.
most durable style. They're essentially plastic that gets laid on the ground as opposed to a paint line just painted.
Right.
It's plastic that gets thermoplastic heated down
Thermosealed,
and
right, yeah,
adheres to the
melted to the
surface.
ground.
Yeah.
Right, okay, but we restripe all of our crosswalks, all of our standard crosswalks every year as part of our street line painting program, right?
That's actually Scott's department and.
But anyway,
Foreman below. us.
I guess my point is that's built into the city's budget at like 12 grand a year or something like that,
I
right?
believe
We
you're correct.
restripe everything. How long do the thermoplastic crosswalks last?
I don't know how long it lasts off the top of my head. I'm not a traffic control expert.
Okay, well, I guess the only reason I'm asking is because we put in those weird brick crosswalks downtown.
Yeah.
Which are great looking, but they're falling apart.
Yeah.
It's been maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
And if it's going to cost us $150,000 to replace all these crosswalks 10 years from now, we're not likely to have it or more. I don't know. I'm just kind of, that's part of what I'm trying to figure out.
Cost benefit analysis between other materials or this. is what you're essentially getting
Yeah,
at,
I mean,
right?
they're gonna look fantastic, and presumably get people's attention. I'm just putting some thought into that too, or asking that the
One of-
administration put some thought into that.
One of the big takeaways here is we're salvaging a grant that was given to us back in 2016 and repurposing it.
Right, no,
I
that's
just wanted,
awesome.
like,
Yeah, no, I mean, and I remember receiving the grant and I'm glad we didn't use it to widen Pine Street. I'm just asking the administration to think through these things before we before we get a design that's going to wind up costing us more money to maintain in the long run.
Gary, you were gonna jump in.
Thermoplastic normally has a 3 to 5 year lifespan.
Okay,
That's actually, part of why we're doing this is hiring this company to do this work for us. That's the intent. That's their specialty. This is a traffic control specialty design firm. So Yeah,
I understand that. And that's great that we're controlling traffic. I'm just asking for the most cost effective way to do it and whether or not it's thermoplastic. As part of the, if right, for 3 to 5 years, and then we have to replace it. And if it's going to cost us 150,000 to lay in, that's, but whereas maybe they could design some other sort of crosswalk mechanism that would hold up better for us, that would also provide us with some of the same traffic control elements. Just putting it out there, because that seems to me like, if it's only 3 to 5 years that it lasts, thanks, Gary, then we should be thinking about how we're going to replace it in 3 to 5 years. Right.
If we're gonna go through an engineering process, maybe that's something our engineer can look at for us. If
Right.
there is something that we can do, maybe within budget that might last longer, great. But if not, I don't think it's
Right.
necessarily a bad thing to try thermoplastic.
No, it's not,
Once.
I'm not
Yeah.
getting down on it necessarily. And I'm glad that we salvaged a grant for it. I'm just saying that we should look at the longevity of the product and if there are other products that might hold up better for us, that we might be more easily able to replace when we get there. Right. So, anyway, we can,
Who chose this company?
I did actually. I asked PennDOT, do I have to actually put this out? This is one of the very few contracts I did not put out for request for proposal. I don't have to. I asked PennDOT's local projects coordinator if I was required to, and he said, no, I just wanted to reward Livick for all the work they did with, as I mentioned earlier, the traffic signal conditions document and repurposing these specific locations in the city, working directly with PennDOT for that.
okay.
Our streets and parks would not be able to salvage the thermoplastic at all. It probably not, right, Gary?
Again, the length of it really depends on, obviously, the living conditions. They say it can last up to 10 years, but the average is 3 to 5 years, depending on the conditions and how.
Traffic.
Yeah, traffic.
We just have to be careful that if it becomes dangerous with people crossing the streets and stuff.
This isn't anything
It
new.
adheres into the pavement, so it won't be like something that's sticking up, causing someone to slip or fall or anything.
Okay.
These are already located all over town. You don't even know it when you drive over them. They last 3 to 5 years versus paint 1 year, basically.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Here you see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
No,
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
6-1. John, thank you very
Thank you.
much. I appreciate your help. Item 8, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution real estate reduction, and these are 4 properties for Lerda.
Yeah. Okay, is there a motion in a second?
So move.
Second. Motion is second. I think Kevin's remote. So.
I am, yes.
Good evening, sir. I'll turn it over to you.
So this is a real estate reduction for Lerda. There are 4 properties being listed: 150 West 3rd Church Street, 300 East Church Street, 621 Hepburn Street, and 151 East 3rd Street. These properties have all completed Lerda applications and have been approved by the respective departments over in the county and both the city. This is just city council reducing the real estate to match what the assessment has chosen to do.
Thank you, Kevin. Are there any comments or questions from members of council? Okay. Here you see none, Mrs. Frank.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
yes,
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Kevin, thanks for hanging in there.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 9, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing changes to the fire civil service rules and regulations.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second. Motion is second. I believe Chief Unks is remote also.
I told him I
You're
could
gonna
take
cover?
this for you. He's
No worries.
still on if we have any questions.
Okay. Floor is yours, Mr. Mackey. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so what we're doing here is adding 2 things to the fire civil service rules and regulations. The lesser of the two, 3.6.4, we're adding some specified study materials for candidates to look at before they take the written exam. The more important of the two, 2.6.4, we are adding a 1 mile run with an allotted time of 10 minutes to finish that run. And the reason that we're doing that is because when we send cadets to the fire academy, Chief Bunks told us that the 1.5 mile run at the academy seems to be the thing that trips people up the most. So, and it costs us money to send candidates, obviously, to the fire academy. And we actually, according to Chief Bunks, had somebody recently, I don't know, and Chief, you can correct me on this if you want to jump in. I don't know how recently it was, but fail out of the fire academy because they could not complete their 1.5 mile run. Cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of $15,000. So what this is going to do is this is going to assure as much as possible that the people we are sending to the fire academy will be able to complete that run, essentially. So, and I'll open up the floor to, we had a really good conversation at Public Safety on Tuesday about this. So I'll open it up to other members if they want to say anything.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mackey. Any other?
Yeah, sorry, and they you only get one chance. So if you fail, that's it. There's no redos.
And that's forever.
So, yeah,
Forever, right?
that's. I mean, I think you can. You might be able to go
Pay
back
another
and
15,000 and do the whole thing again.
yeah. I mean, you can't once you fail that at the fire academy, you're done. Yeah.
Mr. Biter.
The question that I have is, it's 1.5 miles at the fire academy, but we're only requiring 1 mile. Should we be requiring 1.5 miles?
Well, I think what we don't want to do, and again, I won't speak for the chief, and this wasn't discussed at public safety. It's a good question. I think what I would say is we don't want to limit our pool too much. I understand 1.5 miles doesn't sound like a lot to do, and I believe it's 10 minutes. But at any rate, that would be my guess. And Chief, if you're still on, you can answer that question if you would like.
He's there on the, his name is on the screen, but he's running his 1.5 miles.
Yeah, I think if you scroll down to page 8, I believe it's page 8 of 22, and you also see that candidates have to do the what they call the firefighter combat challenge, which is 5 tasks in 7 minutes or under. That was my question initially, was like, if you can do these 5 things in 7 minutes, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to do 1.5 mile run. But I think what we're trying to do is hedge our bets here a little bit more. So, you know, I think with the addition of a mile run in 10 minutes with this combat challenge, which I honestly am not sure how anybody can actually do it.
Yeah.
While wearing a 50-pound vest. You know.
Are they wearing the 50-pound vest during the mile run too? Is that the problem?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
But if you look at tasks 1 through 5.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And think about also wearing a 50-pound vest while you're doing it. So again, I don't, if the chief is there, I mean, I Councilman Biter, I don't have a good answer for you. That would be my only guess, is that a mile in 10 minutes at least gives us an idea that somebody is going to be able to do 1.5 miles. Once they get to the academy, go through all of the training, because this physical agility test, I'm assuming, happens at the end of the academy. So, yeah.
Councilman Mackey.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I had some errors with my phone here. You're 100% right. That is what we came up with that run, is to do somewhere near 70% for the test, 70% of what is expected at the fire academy. So a 1 mile run is roughly 66%, so 67%. So we just rounded that off to make it easy.
That makes perfect sense. Okay. Ms. Mealy and then Mr. Allison.
Yeah, I mean, if there's further training in between the performance times, then I think that makes sense. The time is not 10 minutes for a mile and a half, is it? Or is it?
At the fire
No,
academy.
no, they have to do it within a mile and a half and 13 minutes.
Okay, all right, okay, yeah, so they have to basically slightly improve their performance. I was gonna say, that's a big jump if it's 10 minutes for a mile and a half, and I've never been able to run a mile and a half that fast in my life. Anyway, of course, I also can barely carry a 50-pound sack of flour, so I suppose I'm missing out on most of your testament. Randy, I'm sorry.
Allison.
If you can run a mile in 10 minutes, you build up your aerobic capacity and everything enough that you can knock off the extra half mile.
Yeah. So when I took the test back in 1990, that was part of the test, was a mile and a half run, and you had to do it within 13 minutes. So there was a few that were knocked out, but it wasn't a great number, believe it or not. Today it's a little bit different.
I'm sorry, Chief. How long ago did you take this test?
In 1990.
It's nice to know they haven't changed their standards, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's sharing.
Any other comments or questions? Chief, thanks for joining us remotely. We appreciate it.
You bet, not a problem.
Mrs. Franklin, the vote, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mr. Viter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. By my notes, Mrs. Frank, we're down to 17.
We
Am I
are.
missing anything?
We
Perfect.
are.
Item 17, except for filing, we have Finance Committee meeting minutes from January 3rd, 2023, ERC meeting minutes from December 14th, 22, January 4th, 23, and January 18th, 23, Veteran Memorial Park Commission meeting minutes from January 9th, 2023, and Water Sanitary Authority meeting minutes from January 25th, 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Members of council. Hearing seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mr. Viter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 18, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be on Thursday, March 30th, 7 p.m. right here at Trade and Transit 2, 3rd floor. Upcoming meetings, we are having a police pension board meeting following this meeting. Tuesday, March 21st, 6 p.m. is our next HARB board meeting. Wednesday, March 22nd, 11:30 a.m. is our redevelopment authority. Tuesday, March 28th, 11:30 a.m. is public safety, 1 p.m. finance, 2:30 p.m. public works. Wednesday, March 29th, 9 a.m. is our economic revitalization committee, and Thursday, March 30th, 7 p.m. is our next city council meeting. I forgot to announce this at the beginning of the meeting. We did have an executive session earlier this week regarding matters of litigation. I'll open the floor for comments from members of city council.
Happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Be safe
And be safe.
and have fun.
And have fun. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any comments from the administration? I'm guessing no. Any comments from members of the public? Okay. Any comments from the news media? Mr. Boji has graced us with his presence tonight, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll find out. If you would state your name, your outlet address for the record, that would be great. And you have 3 minutes after that.
Right.
And welcome, Mr. Boji.
John Boji, and I'm here representing PennLive.com and the rest of the media. And I'm here because this is Sunshine Week, in case you didn't know it. And I'm not talking about the nice weather we had today, but the open meeting meeting situation. And it has come to my attention, and I have a legal opinion also from the Media Council for the Pennsylvania News Media Association, It is our belief that city council has not been in full compliance with the open meeting law since 2021. And this is the situation that there's no Pennsylvania law that permits a remote only public meetings. Act 15 of 2020 authorized remote meetings during the COVID emergency declaration, but it and various pandemic related provisions ended in 2021 when the General Assembly revoked the governor's disaster declaration. Public meetings must be held in person. That includes committee meetings. Some laws allow for remote participation by individual public officials as long as there is a quorum physically present in a public facility. And remote participation can, and whoever does remote participation can hear and be heard by all. The act applies to committees that provide advice or take official action. Committees providing advice to council triggers the act. So you don't have to, I know you're not taking action at committee meetings now. You stopped doing that, but you're still providing advice. Agencies may provide supplementary remote access to in-person public meetings like you do here. But remote technology does not take the place of in-person public meetings. There are many reasons for this, including the simple fact that many Pennsylvanians are unable to access remote-only meetings. I thank you. If I have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And but just wanted to bring this to your attention, and hopefully that council will comply with the open meeting law and start scheduling committee meetings in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boji. Any other comments from the news media? I don't think there's any other outlets here. Okay, motion and a second for adjournment.
Move it.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Sit tight, take a couple minutes if anybody needs a drink, and then we can do the police pension board meeting here quick.
How are we getting Siraj over
I need
there?
a drink of water. Ugh.
Is that why you guys all have the one?
All right, I will call the Police Pension Board meeting to order. Let me clarify, at the end of the city council meeting, I mentioned that we had an executive session. The executive session was actually of the Police Pension Board regarding matters of litigation. So let me clarify that. My apologies for the public. So we have 3 items on our agenda. Item 1 is the approval of the meeting minutes from November 3rd, 2022. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions related to the minutes? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for the approval of the minutes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yep.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Sharaj.
Yeah.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy, Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Item 2 is a pension for Thomas Ungard. I'm gonna let Mr. Lubin introduce this, and then we can proceed accordingly following his introduction of this.
Yeah.
Mr. Lubin, the floor is
Okay.
yours.
Yeah, the background of this is that Tom Ungard is a former member of the police department. And it's been in and out of litigation for a number of years on first his entitlement to a pension. He was successful in court on that. And now and the court's never determined how much or what the pension should be, only the fact he's entitled to it. Through Mock and Hop, they did 3 different calculations. One based on, I think it was the time of when he was suspended, a middle ground, and then the third area is 20-year pension. And I think the numbers on the middle ground are about 18 years that he'd be entitled to. And the administration has Tom's attorney, Tony Caputo, representing Tom and the FOP, they recommended the middle ground. And Austin White, on behalf of the administration, says they have no opposition to it. And from my review, and also with obviously members of the board, and with Austin White and with Tony Caputo, their attorney, it will be also my recommendation for the one for the middle ground, and that be approved, and that it be approved subject. We're working on, and council's received a draft of a settlement agreement with Tom to resolve some other issues in addition to this. And we would ask that it be conditional on the approval. A draft has been provided to council, and then that way we can answer any questions. Unfortunately, the draft, since we didn't reach the understanding on the middle ground till it was drafted and copies circulated, it was already into the middle of this week. And I think everyone has received the final draft as far as I'm aware. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Norm. So just to clarify, your recommendation is that we approve the 18-year calculation contingent upon approval of the settlement agreement in 2 weeks by city council.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
From what I understand from Mr. Caputo, the FOP and Mr. Ungard have agreed or are in agreement with the settlement agreement.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. I appreciate that. So we would need a motion and a second of Norm's recommendation. And then we can open up any discussion on that. So is there a motion and a second to approve the 18-year contingent upon council approval of the settlement in 2 weeks?
Move it. Second.
And a second. Motion and a second. Okay. Any comments, questions, items of discussion related to this at all?
So I have a question.
Sure.
Norm, can you clarify the 18-year agreement?
Yes.
So you're recommending that we vote to pass the option of the 18-year agreement. That's subject to the approval of the stipulations of the agreement itself.
Yes.
So when you say pass it, are we talking about the monetary sum itself?
It's already set forth in that
Correct.
calculation by Mock and Hop. And when I went back and reviewed my own personal, or should say personal, but city information on Mr. Ungard, I thought the 18 years actually came close to what I had thought he would be entitled to. So that's why I'm supporting it.
Does that answer your question, Vince?
Yeah. Any other questions? Mr. Pelisi?
We still have not concluded exactly what portion's coming from where, correct? So
That's
we-
really decided by Mock and Hop's going to determine that. Once they're told, calculate the 18, I think they've laid it out.
They did.
What
Well, I
portion is
saw it.
general fund, what portion is pension plan payments.
So
But those are numbers that are factored pretty much by through the state.
So what
There
we're
is no real
pretty-
discretion on a lot of that.
what we're looking to decide is you're looking for our approval to
Yes.
pass this, but based upon that, we can all come together on an agreement in 2 weeks' time.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, but we'd like to get the first part started tonight. That's all.
okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Appreciate that, Mr. Pelisi. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Here you see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion in a second for Norm's recommendation.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Sharaj,
Yeah.
Mr. Viter,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy, Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 8-0. Item 3, any related items? I don't know of any, but I don't know if other members of the pension board have any. I don't see any. Okay. Motion a second for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Pension board's concluded. Thank you, everyone. Everybody have a good evening.